Allow your shoulders to drop just a little. Let your breath slow down. Deeper. Longer. Outside, the Nordic winter night is drawing very close. Not the kind of cold from a mild evening chill, but a cold that knows how to wait. It slips through every crack in the wooden walls, every strand of dried grass, every layer of packed earth. The air stiffens. Each time you exhale, your breath turns into a thin mist, slowly dissolving into the darkness. The wind does not rush or howl. It presses itself against the thick wooden walls, steady and patient, as if it already knows this night will be long. You are not standing here observing this scene. You are here. You lie down, your body wrapped in thick, coarse, heavy animal skins. They are not soft. They are not pleasant smelling. But they carry the warmth of an older life. Sheepskin, reindeer hide, cattle hide, layered one over another, resting lightly across your chest, your shoulders, your legs. Their weight makes you reluctant to move. It holds you in place. It tells your body now is the time to rest. And in that very quiet moment, a question appears. Not urgent, not fearful, just deeply human curiosity. How did anyone survive nights like this? If you're new to this channel, stay here for a moment. Tap like, share and subscribe. Not to support me, but so you always have a place to return to whenever you need sleep that is calmer, slower and warmer. Here, history does not wake you up. History is here to lull you to sleep. You don't need to remember names. You don't need to memorize dates. You only need to remain in this night a little longer. The cold is still there. It does not disappear. The Vikings did not defeat winter. They did not conquer it. They simply learned how to lie still inside it. They learned how to keep warmth from escaping too quickly. They learned how to let the night pass more slowly. Around you, the darkness is not completely silent. You hear the wind gently pressing against the roof. You hear wood softly contracting from the cold. You hear the steady breathing of other bodies, very close by. But for now, you do not need to see them. It is enough to know that you are not alone. You are never alone in a Viking longhouse. Let your heartbeat slow to match your breathing. There is no need to think about tomorrow. No need to think about the weather. There is only the night, and the simple act of lying down, being warm enough, and allowing time to pass. In the modern world, you may be used to control adjusting the temperature, switching lights on and off, sealing windows tight. But here, in this Viking winter night, there are no buttons. There is only quiet acceptance. Acceptance that cold is part of life. Acceptance that safety does not always mean comfort. And acceptance that enough to survive can sometimes feel like warmth. You pull the animal skin a little closer to your chin. Your breath warms a very small pocket of space in front of your face. That space, just large enough for you, is where you shelter through the night. Everything beyond it may be cold, dark and endless. But here in this moment, your body knows it is protected. The Vikings did not lie down with hope. They lay down with habit. Across generations, their bodies learned this simple truth. When night comes, conserve energy. Move less. Stay close to one another. Let time do its work. You may feel your eyelids growing a little heavier. That's all right. You are not missing anything important. History does not disappear when you fall asleep. In fact, this is exactly how history was lived, through short, long, restless, but necessary sleep. Through winter nights endured not by strength, but by patience. And as you lie here, wrapped in imagined layers of animal hides, listening to wind touch wood, you are doing exactly what people thousands of years ago once did. They breathed. They waited. They let the night pass. In the next part, once your eyes have adjusted to the darkness and your breathing has slowed enough for your body to feel safe, we will look around a little, not to wake you, but to understand why the Viking longhouse, in all its rough simplicity, was enough to keep people inside it through the long winter season. For now, you can remain still. The night is still here, and you are exactly where you need to be. D-I, life, B-N-D, ch, Y, ch, X, C, ch, no, C, T, B, T, ch, B, sung, G, no, no, A, NHPK, V, C, M, XC, C, ch, N, sang fong si chi. As your body gradually adjusts to the cold outside, as your breathing is no longer rushed, you begin to sense more clearly what is surrounding you. Not warmth in the modern sense, but a much older form of protection. You are lying inside a Viking longhouse, not as an architectural structure, but as a body quietly enduring winter alongside the people within it. The longhouse is not tall, the ceiling is low, the roof heavy, sloping downward close to the ground. It does not rise up to challenge the wind. It bows, like a living creature that understands that in the northern winter survival matters more than standing upright. The walls are built from rough timber, sealed with earth, mud and turf. Thick layers of grass cut directly from the ground, roots still intact, still holding moisture and the scent of cold soil. When you touch it, you do not feel clean dryness. You feel weight, dampness and silence. These walls are thicker than you might expect. Not to trap heat like a furnace, but to slow the cold down. The wind strikes from outside, but it does not pass straight through. Snow piles up on the roof, adding another heavy layer. And paradoxically, that very weight helps stabilize the structure against fierce winds. The house does not resist. It accepts being covered, pressed down, surrounded. You can still hear the wind outside, no longer sharp or piercing, but dulled, as if the house itself is filtering the world for you. The pressure of winter remains present, but it has been slowed, softened, made gentle enough for the people inside to breathe steadily. Among modern scholars, one question continues to return. Did these longhouses actually retain heat, or did they simply block the wind? Research suggests the truth is not especially comforting. On the coldest nights, temperatures inside longhouses were still very low. There was no architectural miracle here, no hidden warmth as we might imagine. But perhaps that was never the goal. The longhouse was not built to make people comfortable. It was built to do one thing: only allow people to remain through the night, to remain through the season, to remain long enough for winter to withdraw on its own. You begin to understand that this house does not function as an absolute barrier. It is more like a second skin, unable to stop the cold completely, but able to make it arrive more slowly, more gently, and more tolerably. Like coarse wool clothing, still cold but not unbearable. The floor is not dry, packed earth, hard and cold, releasing moisture very slowly. That is why all daily life is raised above the ground: benches, sleeping platforms, sitting areas. Not for comfort, but for survival. Every detail of the longhouse has been shaped by hundreds of repeated winters, where what did not work was simply abandoned. The longhouse has no windows in the modern sense. Daylight enters only in limited ways, but at night this becomes an advantage. Fewer openings, fewer paths for cold air to invade. Darkness is not an enemy here. It is part of the protection. You may feel that although the cold is still present, it no longer feels as threatening as it did when you stood outside. Inside the longhouse, everything has been made slower, slower to feel, slower to expend energy, slower to survive. The Vikings did not build homes to impress, not to display power, not to endure unchanged for centuries. They built houses to sleep in, to wake up in, to sleep again, and if necessary, to die quietly wrapped within the presence of community. And so the final sensation this house offers is not warmth. It is enough. Not warm by modern standards. Not comfortable. Not absolutely safe, but survivable. It was not warm. It was survivable. As you lie here, your back resting against the heavy earthen wall, listening to the wind being stopped on the other side of thick turf, your body understands this truth. This is not a place meant to fight nature. This is a place meant to exist alongside it in silence. And once you have grown familiar with the shape of the longhouse, its low ceiling, thick walls, and its deeply intelligent act of bowing, you will begin to notice something else more subtle. The air inside this house is not shaped by wood and earth alone. It is shaped by smell, the smell of smoke, dampness, animal hides, and the breath of living beings sharing the same space. And those scents will be the next thing you begin to sense very slowly, very deeply as the Viking night continues to unfold. Once you've grown familiar with the shape of the longhouse, with its low ceiling, thick walls and heavy roof bowing before the wind, something else begins to reach you. It cannot be seen. It has no clear form, yet it is everywhere. It is scent, not a single scent, but many layers woven together, much like the layers of animal hides covering your body. The first thing you recognize is the smell of old wood smoke, dry, bitter and settled. It is no longer sharp like fresh fire. It has been here a long time, long enough to feel familiar. That smoke blends with the damp scent of earthen walls, the turf that still carries the cold breath of the ground, and the smell of animal hides. Thick, heavy, carrying the memory of lives that once moved. Then there is the scent of livestock. Not strong, not sudden, but always present. The smell of warm breath, damp fur, dried manure mixed with straw. In the enclosed space of the longhouse, these scents are not pushed away. They remain. They blend, and slowly they become the air of life. You breathe in, not deeply, just enough. Smoke clings to everything. It settles into your hair, into the coarse wool of your clothing, into the hide blanket resting on your chest. If you raise a hand to your head, your fingers will carry the smell with them. A scent that is difficult to wash away. The Vikings carried this smell with them throughout the winter, not as a choice but as part of existence itself. Modern archaeology still bears witness to this. Roof beams found at longhouse sites are often darkened, coated in thick layers of soot, not from great fires, but from small fires day after day, accumulating slowly. That smoke was not merely a byproduct, it was a form of protection. It dried the wood, it drove away insects, it extended the life of the house. Smoke in this world was not simply a discomfort, it was a rough kind of care. Of course, smoke stung the eyes, it dried the throat, it demanded adaptation from the lungs. But the human body is remarkably skilled at learning how to live with imperfection. Across many winters, the Vikings grew accustomed to breathing this air. Their breaths became shallower, slower, less wasteful. You begin to notice that within the longhouse, there is no clean smell in the modern sense, but there is also nothing truly foreign. Every scent comes from what is keeping you alive: fire, earth, hides, and living creatures nearby. There is no separation between living space and life itself. They are one and the same. The smell of smoke changes how time moves inside the longhouse. It slows everything down. When the air is thick and heavy, you do not want to move much. You do not want to speak loudly. You do not rise unless it is truly necessary. Smoke, in its quiet way, teaches people how to conserve energy. In the modern world, we try to remove smells. We open windows. We turn on fans. We mask the air with fragrance. But here, in this Viking night scent, is not something to be driven away. It is a reminder that you are inside a shared space, that your breath blends with the breath of others, that no one exists alone. You may feel your eyelids growing heavier. Smoke softens the light. It blurs edges. Sharp boundaries dissolve. What remains are dark shapes, slow movements, and small sounds. And within the scent of smoke there is something deeply human: familiarity. When a smell has been present long enough, it no longer registers consciously. It becomes background, a signal that things are continuing as they should, that a fire still burns somewhere, that people are still here. You do not need to like this smell. You only need to grow accustomed to it. And once you do, your body understands this is a place for sleep. Not deep, unbroken, perfectly quiet sleep, but sleep that is allowed to be interrupted, allowed to be heavy with scent, allowed to be imperfect, yet sufficient for recovery. In the longhouse, living space is not measured in square footage. It is measured in shared endurance, in the ability to breathe the same air, to accept the same smell, to exist together through the night. And once the scent of smoke has soaked deeply into your hair, your skin, your blankets, you begin to notice its source. Not the ceiling, not the walls, but a very specific central place, where faint light is still moving, where warmth is being created little by little. There, the fire is still burning. DIELBN, DCHY TBTTKHN, Bisung GI nu N, HPKH nu N, HVCUSUCM, XCC Chu N, Sang Fong Si Chi K Chu N, Video YouTube, Chu N, M, American Bedtime History Story RC. At the center of the longhouse, where the scent of smoke grows slightly heavier and the light softens even more, there is a slow, steady movement that you can sense without looking directly at it. Not a person, not the wind, but fire. It does not flare up. It is not dramatic. It is a low, stretched line of flame running along the length of the house like a warm breath laid horizontally across the space. The fire here is not allowed to be tall. It is not allowed to rush. It is kept small, steady, patient, as if it knows the night will be long and energy must be conserved. You feel the warmth before you see the light, a thin ribbon of heat spreading very slowly, touching your face, your hands, the animal hide resting on your chest. Not enough to feel comfortable in the modern sense, but enough for your body to recognize there is life here. The fire does many things at once. It warms carefully. It cooks in low-hanging pots, where thick porridge simmers slowly, where fat melts into heat. It provides light, but only enough to push the darkness back a few steps. No more. Inside, the longhouse light is not meant to defeat the night. It exists only to help people remain within it without losing their way. But fire also carries danger. The Vikings understood this well. A single spark could catch dry straw. A shift in the wind could thicken the smoke, making each breath more difficult. A moment of carelessness could lead to burns, or worse, smoke suffocation during sleep. Because of this, the fire is always watched, not with tension but with habit. Someone wakes during the night to add a small piece of wood. Someone uses a stick to pull back embers, keeping the fire from spreading. No one speaks much. No one gives orders. Fire, like winter itself, is too familiar to require discussion. Archaeology shows us this clearly. Long ash trenches run through the centers of excavated longhouses, thin, even layers of ash, stacked one upon another, revealing that fire was not an event, it was a continuous presence. Day after day, season after season. The fire was never allowed to go out, because if it did, the cold would return quickly as if it had only been waiting outside. In many houses, the hearth sits exactly at the center, not for convenience, but for fairness. Heat spreads outward in both directions, favoring no one. Light touches every face lying nearby. The fire does not belong to any individual. It belongs to the community. You can hear the fire very softly, not crackling loudly. Just the sound of wood tightening, ash settling, embers exhaling a faint glow. These sounds do not wake you. They soothe you, like a background rhythm, steady, dependable. In the modern world, we often think of fire as a tool. Turn it on, turn it off. But here, fire is more like a living presence. It must be fed, watched, respected, and in return it gives people one more night of survival. Fire does not offer comfort. It offers opportunity. The opportunity for food to cook, for clothing to dry a little more, for breath not to freeze in the throat. That is all, and that is enough. You begin to notice that when the fire burns, people lie closer together, not out of romance, but out of logic. Shorter distances share heat more efficiently. Dim light allows the eyes to rest. Deep darkness at the edges of the longhouse invites sleep to arrive sooner. Fire, in its quiet way, organizes living space. It decides who lies where, who wakes when, who adds wood, who stirs the embers. It gives no commands, yet everything revolves around it. And then as the night deepens, the fire is kept even smaller. Less wood, less light, only embers remain. Deep red, like a slowing heartbeat. Everyone understands, as long as the fire is still breathing, the house is still alive. You may feel your eyelids growing heavier. The dim light dissolves edges. Faces lose definition. What remains is presence, sharing, a fragile calm, but one that can be trusted. Fire does not promise tomorrow. It only carries the night forward. And in the Viking world, that is what matters most. As you lie here listening to the fire soften, feeling thin warmth spread through layers of animal hide, you are at the true center of the house. Not geographically, but in terms of life itself. Everything else turns around this moment, another night held in place. And when the fire has been lowered to its safest point, when smoke thickens slightly as air grows still, people once again face the familiar question, how to keep this warmth, while still leaving enough air to breathe until morning. That is when naturally the Viking night carries on into its next chapter. Smoke and ventilation. A balance never perfect, yet accepted, repeated, and lived with across generations. DIL, BND Chai, DIXC, Kong CT, BT Kong C, DBT Kong B, Sung CVTXUNG, DNG, NHP, GIN, Guan CU Tri, TTTU, VCMXC, Theophong C Chai, Kai Chu NM, American Bedtime History Storytelling, CCPHNTRC. When the fire has been kept low, when the light is reduced to small red embers breathing softly in the center of the longhouse, something else becomes more noticeable. Not to the eyes, but to the lungs. It is smoke. Inside a Viking longhouse there is no chimney, no clean channel, no finished structure designed to carry smoke neatly away. Smoke is born at the very center of life. and it must find its own path very slowly, very hesitantly, as if it too is learning how to exist alongside people. Some of the smoke clings to the low wooden ceiling, some lingers in the air, thin but persistent. Another portion searches for escape through tiny gaps in the roof, through crude ventilation openings, uneven and imperfect, opened and covered again depending on wind and weather. Those openings are never wide enough to feel comfortable. They are only wide enough to avoid suffocation. If they are opened more, cold wind rushes in, carrying fine snow and blade-sharp cold. If they are closed too tightly, smoke builds, quickly drying the throat, stinging the eyes, making each breath feel heavier. The Vikings are never faced with a correct choice, only choices that are less harmful, weighed again and again, hour by hour, moment by moment. You can imagine a hand reaching out in the darkness, not rushed, not hesitant, simply pulling back a roof covering, just a little, enough for the smoke to shift. Then the hand withdraws. No one speaks. There is no need. Everyone understands. A few hours later, when the wind changes direction, the motion is repeated. Open a little, close a little, adjust, observe, repeat. All through the long night, this problem is never fully solved. The air inside the longhouse is always in a state of compromise. A compromise between warmth and breath, between fire and lungs, between survival and comfort. And the human body over many generations learns to live in that state without complaint. You breathe in, not deeply, no need for much. You breathe out, a little slower, a little longer. Smoke slows everything down. It strips movement of urgency. It makes people unwilling to rise, unwilling to speak loudly, unwilling to move unless truly necessary. In that space, even thought itself slows. There is no room for excess intention. There are no engineers here. No blueprints, no final answer, only experience passed on quietly from one winter to the next. When to lower the fire, when to add a small piece of wood, when to open the roof a little wider, when to close it again to hold warmth around sleeping bodies. You may feel your throat grow slightly dry, your eyes sting just a little, not painfully, just enough to remind you that the air is still moving, that your lungs are still working, that you are still alive in the night. In the modern world, we are accustomed to seeking optimization, a perfect solution, a system that works in every situation. But here in this Viking night, there is no perfection. There is only patient repetition. Each night is an adjustment, each shift of wind a new variable, each winter an old lesson repeated. And over time, people stop trying to solve smoke and ventilation. They simply live alongside it. They accept that a little stinging in the eyes is the price of warmth. They accept that a little cold is the price of being able to breathe. Smoke in its quiet way teaches the Vikings a lesson without words. Not every problem needs to be eliminated. Some only need to be kept within limits. You lie more still now. Your body does not demand more air. Your breathing becomes shallow, even as if your lungs too understand that tonight requires no effort, only existence. Smoke does not prevent sleep. It simply shapes sleep differently. Lighter, more fragmented, but sufficient for recovery. Enough to open your eyes in the morning, to rekindle the fire, to repeat the ancient circle of life once more. Inside the longhouse, no one hopes for a perfect night. They hope only that the night passes. And when the smoke has settled into its familiar balance, when the roof openings have been adjusted, just enough, when the fire has become deep red embers, breathing steadily, something else begins to rise in your awareness, not through scent, not through warmth, but through sound, the wind touching wood, smoke shifting softly, people and animals breathing within the same space. And naturally, as sight has rested, scent has become familiar, breath has slowed. The Viking night carries you farther still, through the sounds of night, steady, repetitive, and so familiar that they are no longer frightening at all. DIY. BN, D chwy, tras ka, kang twa, twam, BTCGP, twa, twam BONLNVNGINHPK Storytelling YouTube Chuen MGUCUCABN. Once the smoke has settled, once the breath no longer stings, and once the light has dimmed to the point where you no longer need to open your eyes to know where you are, the Viking night begins to register in a different way, through sound, There is no absolute silence inside the longhouse. Instead, there are small, steady sounds repeating themselves gently, as if the house itself is breathing alongside the people within it. The wind does not howl violently. It whispers, brushing against the turf roof, sliding over heavy layers of earth, then pulling away again. The wind is not an alarm. It is simply a reminder that the world beyond these walls is still moving. The wood speaks as well. Beams tighten in the cold, releasing soft, dry sounds, like the sigh of something very old. Nothing sudden, nothing frightening, just wood adjusting, reshaping itself to the winter night. You hear it, then forget it, the way you forget distant rain or the soft rhythm of small waves. Somewhere nearby, a person coughs. One low, brief sound, then silence again. No one turns, no one asks. In the longhouse, the sounds of the body need no explanation. They simply mean that people are still awake, or sleeping deeply enough to cough without fully waking. The animals join this quiet harmony too. A cow exhales a long, heavy, steady breath. A goat shifts its hoof, touching the packed earth. A sheep lets out a faint sound, then settles. These noises do not interrupt sleep. They support it like a familiar background you've heard all winter long. There is no empty silence for the mind to wander into, no quiet so complete that you are forced to listen to yourself. Here, sound is always present, just enough to remind you that you are not alone. If your eyes are closed, or if they have closed on their own without you noticing, you may begin to sense that each sound has its own rhythm. The wind arrives, then leaves. The wood creaks, then rests. Animals breathe steadily. People shift softly. No sound competes with another. There is no climax, only gentle repetition. The soundscape of the longhouse is not meant to draw attention. It is like an ancient lullaby, without melody, without words, but steady enough for the body to recognize that this is night, a time to loosen, a time to stop controlling. In the modern bedroom, we often seek perfect silence, turning off machines, sealing doors, blocking every noise. Yet that silence can sharpen the mind, making every thought louder. In the Viking longhouse, this never happens. Because sound never disappears, thoughts have nowhere to echo. They dissolve into the familiar rhythm of the night. You do not need to identify each sound. You do not need to know which one is wind, which is human, which belongs to an animal. Your body has learned something simpler: when these sounds are where they belong, everything is all right. Some nights are louder, the wind presses harder, animals move more. Other nights are quieter, but almost never completely silent. And it is that absence of total silence that becomes a kind of comfort. The Vikings did not sleep in quiet. They slept in familiarity. Sound helped people locate themselves in the dark, without opening their eyes, without standing up. Just by listening, they knew the fire is still alive. People are still here. Animals are still breathing. The house is still standing. Your heartbeat slows unconsciously, matching the rhythm of the space around you. There is nothing left to listen for, nothing left to interpret. Everything is already where it should be. And within that steady pattern of sound, sleep does not need to arrive all at once. It can come and go. Light sleep, waking, sleeping again. That is fine. The night is long, and the sounds remain, keeping watch. And when hearing has done its quiet work, when every sound has faded into background, something very natural happens. Your body begins to search for a position where it can remain still longer. Not on the cold ground, not where the wind reaches, but somewhere raised, away from dampness, away from cold, where wood and straw form a rough but dependable surface. And very gently, very logically, the Viking night carries on into the raised sleeping platforms along the walls, where people learn to sleep above the earth, leaving winter below them and allowing rest to stay just a little longer. D.I.B.N.D.Ch.Y. Trung 3. Chu. T. I.K. Chi. T. T. GNTT. Chi M. D. Chi. Ta Chu N video through Da Chu N dot T Chu N M dot T T Chi Chu dot GM 55 plus. Tigi Siu Trux Exunjdin TNDC. Once your ears have grown accustomed to the steady sounds of the night, the wind sliding across the turf roof, the soft tightening of wood in the cold, the heavy, slow breathing of livestock, your body begins to seek something very simple: a place to lie still. Not just anywhere, but somewhere that keeps you away from the cold quietly creeping up from the ground. Along both sides of the longhouse walls there are raised wooden platforms. Nothing ornate, nothing carved, just thick planks set lengthwise along the house, lifting human bodies away from the cold, damp, packed earth below. These are the Viking beds, and they are among the most important survival adaptations the Vikings ever made. In winter the ground never truly sleeps. It holds the cold of ice and snow, releasing it upwards slowly, patiently, without pause. To lie directly on the earth is to lose heat quickly. The body must work harder to stay warm. Sleep becomes short, broken, exhausting. The Vikings learned this not from books but from repeated experience, from long winters, from sleepless nights, and they made a simple decision: sleep above the ground. The platforms are not very high, just high enough not to touch the earth, but that small difference changes everything. Cold air is heavier and settles near the floor. Even slightly elevated, the body loses less heat. Sleep comes more easily. And when people sleep longer, they survive better. Archaeology still preserves traces of these beds: mortise holes in the walls, worn wood surfaces, compressed layers of straw remaining at longhouse sites. There are no soft mattresses, no clean sheets, only rough wood, dry straw, and sometimes animal hides laid on top. You can imagine the sensation as you lie down. The wood is hard. It does not mold to your body. Straw rustles beneath your back. The hides are heavy, slightly damp, not comfortable by modern standards, but stable, enough that your body does not tense itself searching for position, enough that you can remain still for a long time. The sleeping platforms are not designed for privacy. They run continuously along the walls. Bodies lie close together. There is little space to turn or stretch, but this closeness holds warmth. Heat does not escape from the sides. Bodies keep warmth for one another. The Vikings did not think in terms of sleep quality. They thought in terms of making it through the night. And raised sleeping platforms were part of that answer. Lying there, you no longer hear the damp earth beneath your back. You hear wood instead. Wood is not as cold as soil. It is drier, more stable, and over time it absorbs familiar scents. Smoke hides human presence, not pleasant but familiar, and familiarity allows sleep to arrive faster. In the modern world we often seek softness to sleep. Thick mattresses, plush pillows. But here in the Viking longhouse, softness is not the priority. Insulation from cold is, and wood, straw and elevation, rough materials, do that better than anything else they had. You lie on your side. There is very little room to turn, but that is all right. Your body learns to be still. Less movement means less heat loss, and with fewer movements, sleep is interrupted less often. The raised platform is not just a place to sleep. It is a place where people draw inward against winter, where they accept limited space, where closeness becomes necessary, where comfort is sacrificed for survival. The Vikings did not build beds for indulgent rest. They built them to endure the night, and over generations their bodies adapted to this reality, sleeping on wood, sleeping on straw, sleeping in the very near presence of others. You may feel your back touching another body. You do not know who it is. It does not matter. All that matters is the warmth, the presence, the life beside you. In a long winter that is worth more than any blanket. Raised sleeping platforms do not promise deep, unbroken sleep, but they promise something more important: waking up in the morning. And once you have grown used to the feel of rough wood beneath your back, to straw shifting softly, to heavy hides pressing against your chest, you begin to understand that the platform does not work alone. It works best when people lie together, sharing warmth, sharing space, sharing the long night. And very naturally, very seamlessly, the story of the Viking night moves onward, from survival through structure and materials, to survival through human warmth, through communal sleep, where no one faces the cold alone. D, I, Yil, B, N, D, Ch, Y, Trung, D, 2, T, T, I, Trung, C, T, Chi, T, I, Chi, N, Chi, G, P, T, T, N, H, 3, O, N, Chi, N, G, I, Chi, T, M, Ru, N, G, N, Chi, Chi, T, Chu, N, Chi, video, YouTube, Chu, N, Chi. Once you have settled onto the raised wooden platform, once your back has adjusted to the rough firmness of wood and straw, something else gradually becomes clear. Not through sight, not through thought, but through a very close physical awareness. You are not lying alone. In a Viking longhouse, sleep is rarely a private experience. Family members, relatives, workers, everyone shares the same space. Bodies are placed close together, lined up along the walls like logs laid side by side to hold heat. There are no private rooms, no personal boundaries in the modern sense, only the very real presence of human beings beside other human beings. You sense the breath of the person next to you, slow, heavy, steady. You do not need to look to know who it is. You do not need to know. In the long winter night, identity matters less than warmth. Human warmth spreads slowly. Not like fire, not like thick blankets, but it is persistent. Each body is a small source of heat. When placed close together, those small sources combine, not enough to make the night comfortable, but enough to make it endurable. The Vikings did not sleep together for romance or sentiment. They slept together out of survival logic. A single body lying alone loses heat faster. An isolated person must work harder to stay warm, but when bodies lie close, heat does not escape from the sides. Warmth is held, circulated, shared. In winter, community becomes a living heating system. You may feel an arm resting lightly against your back, a knee touching your leg. Not intentional, not uncomfortable, simply the result of many people sleeping in a confined space. These touches do not wake you. They do the opposite. They remind your body that it is surrounded. No one speaks. No one whispers. Night is not a time for words. Presence is enough. In the longhouse, silence does not mean loneliness. Silence means trust. The old and the young, the strong and the weak, everyone is here. No one is separated. No one is left at the edges. In shared sleep, the divisions of daytime soften. What remains are bodies that need warmth, rest, and the ability to pass through the night. You may notice that over time, breathing begins to synchronize, not deliberately, not instructed, but naturally. One person slows their breath. The person beside them follows. The shared rhythm calms the space, as if the house itself has become a single, large, sleeping organism. In the modern world, we often seek privacy in sleep. Separate rooms, separate beds, personal space. Yet that privacy can sharpen loneliness. When night falls, there is no one breathing beside you, no one shifting nearby. Only the sound of your own thoughts. In the Viking longhouse, this rarely happens. Thoughts have nowhere to echo. They are softened by the presence of others, absorbed into the warmth of community. Shared sleep does not allow complete withdrawal into oneself, but it also demands nothing from you. You only need to be there, and that is enough. Communal warmth does not come from a single act. It comes from repetition. Night after night, lying together, breathing together, existing together. No one needs to explain its importance. The body understands immediately when it is missing. Your eyelids may feel heavier now. Not from exhaustion, but because there is nothing left to watch over. With people on both sides, in front of you and behind you, your body no longer needs to remain alert. It is allowed to soften. The Vikings understood this instinctively, even if they never named it. They knew a person sleeps better when they do not have to keep watch alone. That community does not only sustain life during the day, it saves lives at night. In shared sleep, no one fully controls their own space. But in return, no one faces the winter night alone. It is an ancient trade, and a deeply human one. You lie still. There is no need to turn much, no need to search for the perfect position. Your body learns to fit, to the space, to the others around you. Fewer demands, less tension, and as demands fade, sleep arrives more easily. Shared sleep does not promise deep, uninterrupted rest. You may wake briefly. Someone may cough. Someone may shift, but none of it feels threatening. You adjust, and sleep returns, because you know that around you everything remains as it should be. Community does not make winter disappear, but it makes winter easier to pass through. And once you have grown accustomed to this absence of loneliness, to breath beside you, to warmth passing slowly from one body to another, you begin to notice a small but vital detail in how Viking sleep is arranged. A detail shaped by survival, placed at the very center of protection. Children, the smallest, most vulnerable bodies, are positioned within the warm circle of adults, and from there, naturally and logically, the Viking night carries you deeper still into the geometry of survival, where care and practicality quietly merge night after night within shared sleep. DI, DI, DND, 2AT, DI2A, TI, THT, TI, 2AT, THTA, 3ON, LNGINHP, CHUH, RUN, CHUA, CHUA, NNHT, QUN, VITUN, BCC. Once you have grown used to lying close to other bodies, once communal warmth has begun to feel natural, you start to notice a quiet rule in the way Viking sleep was arranged. The smallest bodies are always placed in the center. Children do not sleep against the walls. They are not placed at the edges. They are never left where cold air slips in most easily. Instead, they are positioned in the middle of the sleeping platform between adults where warmth is thickest and protection is strongest. No instructions are spoken. No ritual is required. This is simply how it is done. Night after night, winter after winter. It is not romantic. It is practical. Children's bodies are smaller. They lose heat faster. They tolerate cold less well. In a northern winter, that difference can mark the line between life and death. The Vikings learned this not through theory but through the hard experience of time, and so they used their own bodies as shields. Adults on the outside, children on the inside. A simple geometry, but an effective one. You can imagine a child sleeping quietly, breath light and a little quicker, surrounded by larger chests, heavier arms, bodies already accustomed to cold. Each adult becomes a wall of warmth, each breath an invisible blanket. Old Norse sagas mention families gathered together at night without detail, without emotional emphasis. Brief, ordinary lines, as if the arrangement were too obvious to explain. Archaeology supports the same pattern. The placement of sleeping platforms, the where, marks the distribution of space. All suggest that children were consistently kept at the center, not because children were cherished in a modern emotional sense, but because they needed to survive. Care in this world is not expressed through words. It is expressed through space, through who lies where, through who accepts a little more cold so that someone else can be warmer. If you have ever been a parent, a grandparent, or a caregiver, this may feel familiar. On nights when a child is sick, when the power goes out, when the cold arrives unexpectedly, you draw them closer without thinking. You do not analyze. You act on an ancient protective instinct. The Vikings did the same. Children slept close enough to hear the heartbeat of adults. Close enough that if they stirred, an arm would shift a blanket back into place, without fully waking. The adult body responds before the mind does. In this geometry of survival, no one occupies the center because of power. The center belongs to those who need protection most. It is an order without laws, sustained simply because it works. There is a particular sense of calm in imagining this arrangement, not because it is beautiful, but because it is right. Aligned with how humans survived for tens of thousands of years, before ideas of comfort, privacy, or personal space existed. Here, children's sleep is not separate from adult sleep. They depend on each other, and that dependence becomes the strength of the community. Vikings did not teach children about winter through explanation. They taught through night, by letting children feel the cold at the edges and the warmth at the center, by letting their bodies learn that being alone is dangerous and being together offers a chance to live. As you rest with this image, it does not matter whether you imagine yourself as the child in the middle or the adult on the outside. What matters is the deep sense that there are nights in this world when people protect one another simply by being close. There is no heroism here, no great sacrifice recorded, only small, repeated choices, night after night, enough for the next generation to endure. And when children sleep soundly, adults sleep more easily as well, not because worry disappears, but because the most important task of the night has been completed. A task never written down, yet repeated across centuries. You may feel the space soften as you imagine this. When the smallest bodies are safe, when their breathing becomes, even the entire longhouse seems to slow, as if the community itself is slipping into a deeper layer of rest. In this order, children do not need to understand why they are placed at the center. They only need to sleep, and that in the Viking winter night is the final purpose of every careful arrangement. And once this geometry of survival has settled, bodies in their places, warmth distributed where it is needed most, attention naturally turns to something very practical: the layers covering those bodies. Coarse blankets, wool, heavy animal hides passed down and thickened across generations. From there, the Viking night leads you onward gently and inevitably into the heavy enclosing warmth of wool and fur, coverings that do more than shield the body, quietly holding communal heat in place until morning. D, I, Yi, D, D, Chu, D, Trung Deving, Twi T, I, Kung C, T Kung, Twi TM, CGP, TNN, GINHP, Chi HM, Mru NG Theophong C Chi K Chu N Video YouTube Chu, NMNHT Quan V. Once everybody has settled into its proper place, once the children have been positioned at the center of the circle of warmth, something else slowly becomes clear. Not through thought, but through weight, you feel it pressing down. Not a single light blanket, but many layers stacked together slowly, deliberately, securely. The first layer is often straw, dry, dark gold straw packed beneath the body or spread thinly across the wooden platform. It is not soft. It rustles, but straw traps countless tiny pockets of air, slowing the transfer of cold from wood to skin. Each stalk creates a small space, and thousands of those spaces together form a simple kind of insulation. Above the straw comes wool, coarse, thick, unevenly woven, sometimes still stiff with rough fibers. Viking wool is not smooth, not white, not clean by modern standards, but it has one essential quality: it retains heat, even when damp. In the northern winter, nothing is ever fully dry. Breath smoke, melting snow, all add moisture to the air and to materials. Linen chills. Bare skin loses heat quickly, but wool holds warmth patiently and steadily. The Vikings did not need thermodynamics to understand this. Their bodies had already learned. Above everything else lies animal hide, sheepskin, cattle hide, reindeer hide, heavy, thick, carrying the unmistakable scent of lives once lived. Hides do more than insulate. They press down. Their weight creates a very specific sensation, being held, being anchored, not easily pulled away by wind or night. You may feel the hide resting against your chest and shoulders, not uncomfortable, just enough to tell the body there is no need to move now. In the modern world, this would be called a weighted blanket. For the Vikings, it was simply a blanket, a primitive duvet, rough but effective. Weight calms the nervous system, slows the heartbeat, allows sleep to arrive without effort. The smell of wool and hide blends together, not pleasant, not clean, but familiar. The scent of old sweat, smoke animals. It tells the body this is a shelter, no vigilance required, no analysis needed. The layers are never arranged perfectly. They overlap in practical ways. Those who feel colder pull another layer closer. Those who are stronger tolerate a bit more cold. There is no absolute fairness, only constant, quiet adjustment throughout the night. You may feel heat building slowly beneath the coverings. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but steadily. Once warmth enters, it does not escape easily. And that is what matters most. The Vikings do not change blankets by season. Their blankets are the season. Each hide, each woolen layer carries memory from winters past. They grow heavier over time, thicker, more scented, and therefore more effective. You lie there beneath the weight, feeling it hold your body in place. There is no need to tense muscles to stay warm. No need to turn often. With less movement, energy is conserved, and sleep comes more easily. Under heavy coverings, time moves differently. Everything slows, thoughts slow as well. You no longer need to monitor your breathing. The blankets do that work for you. They hold warmth, they hold rhythm, they hold you in the night. Blankets, wool, and hides do not provide comfort in the modern sense, but they provide certainty. The certainty that tonight your body is covered, pressed down, contained within a defined space, and within that containment the body finds safety. Your eyelids may feel heavier now, not from exhaustion, but because there is no longer any reason to stay alert. Every layer of protection is in place. Every bit of warmth is being held long enough. The Vikings did not think of blankets as objects. They thought of them as a second skin, an added layer for winter made from what was available, passed down through time. And once you have settled beneath these layers, once their weight has done its work, something very natural happens. You stop noticing each layer individually. They merge into one, like the night, like breathing, like community. And it is at that moment, when warmth has been held long enough and the body has stabilized, that people begin to recognize something else. Not all coverings are the same. Some hides, some furs come from far away, not from the animals around the house, but from long journeys and wider networks of exchange. And so gently and slowly the Viking night opens into the next story. Imported furs and status, not displayed loudly, not announced, but lying quietly atop the sleeping body itself. D years yo bien d chu y. Trung tui tui to. Kung si ti tui tui. Trung cgp tui tui. nh3on lngenhp. Chu gn. Video YouTube. Chu gn. mnh. T quin. Vi tun bcc. Tui th. Once you are lying still beneath the heavy layers of blankets, once the weight of wool and animal hides has softened your body, a very small but very real detail begins to emerge, not through sight but through subtle difference in sensation. Not all hides feel the same. Some are softer, some are thicker, some hold warmth longer, as if the heat itself is reluctant to leave. These hides do not come from the livestock kept around the house. They come from farther away. Reindeer hides from even colder northern regions. Beaver pelts from deep inland rivers and wetlands. Furs that were hunted, traded, and carried across long routes, not to be displayed but to be slept beneath. The Vikings did not hang valuable furs on their walls. They did not show them off in daylight. The value of fur did not lie in being seen. It lay in being placed on the body at night when the cold was real and sleep was necessary. Viking trade networks stretched far beyond what you might imagine in this quiet moment. Their low ships with curved prows carried more than people. They carried furs, hides, and materials capable of keeping humans alive far from the sea. Yet inside the Longhouse, those distant routes did not appear as maps or stories. They appeared quietly, in the different weights of blankets. A beaver pelt retains heat more effectively, especially when damp. A reindeer hide is thicker, better suited for the coldest nights. Those who possessed such hides did not announce it. There was no need. In sleep the body knows. This is status, but not a loud kind. There are no admiring glances, no visible envy, because in winter nights, status is not meant to divide people. It is simply an additional layer of protection, and sometimes it is shared. On certain nights the best hide does not rest on the strongest body. It is pulled toward children, toward the elderly, toward those more vulnerable. No ritual, no explanation, just small familiar adjustments made without words. Trade in this world is never separate from community. Long journeys that bring back better materials are not meant for private indulgence. They allow the entire longhouse to sleep better. Archaeology has found imported furs even in homes that were not the wealthiest, suggesting that distribution was not rigidly hierarchical. These valuable hides moved within the community according to need, season, and night. You can almost feel the difference when imagining such a fur. A little softer, a little heavier, holding warmth longer. Not to keep you awake, but to help you sleep more deeply. In the modern world, we often associate status with what can be seen. Larger houses, finer clothes, visible wealth. In the Viking longhouse, status only truly matters when night falls, when everyone lies at the same level, when light fades, when only bodies and cold remain. In that moment, the true value of material things is no longer appearance, it is function. A better hide does not make you stand out, it makes you wake less often, shiver less, lose less heat, and over a long winter that difference can separate exhaustion from recovery. The Vikings did not build trade networks to accumulate abstract wealth. They did so to sustain life under harsh conditions, and the results of those networks rest quietly, discreetly, right inside sleep itself. As you lie there beneath the heavy coverings, you do not need to know where each hide comes from. You only feel that some layers are more stable, more reliable, and that stability allows your body to let go a little more. No one discusses trade at night. No one recounts dangerous journeys or distant markets. Night is not for large stories. Night is for the quiet use of what has already been brought home. And once fur has fulfilled its role, once warmth has been held long enough, and sleep has deepened, people rely on another source of heat, one that does not come from materials or exchange. It comes from the steady, warm breathing of livestock living under the same roof, releasing heat all night long, silently and persistently. And so slowly and naturally the Viking night carries you onward into something that may sound strange yet makes perfect sense in this world. Animals as living heaters present, not for comfort, but for the survival of the entire community. D, 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 I, D, D, G, D, D, Trung, Twi, T, 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 Trung, T, 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 I, Trung. T T T T I T I T T T T I T I T I T I T. Once the heavy layers of blankets have done their work, once fur has held warmth in place long enough for the body to soften, another source of heat is still active, not silent like wool, not passive like hide. It breathes. At one end of the longhouse, beyond the raised sleeping platforms, livestock shelter through the night. Cattle, goats, sheep, not fully separated, not sealed behind solid walls, just a slightly lower space closer to the ground, where large, slow bodies stand close together to resist the cold. In the modern world, the idea of bringing animals indoors may seem strange, but on a Viking winter night it is entirely logical. Livestock give off heat. Not sudden warmth, but steady, continuous, persistent warmth generated simply by being alive. Every heavy breath from a cow, every exhale from a goat, every slow movement of a sheep releases small amounts of heat into the shared air. When many living beings breathe together in an enclosed space, that heat accumulates, not enough to warm like fire, but enough to slow the cold. You can smell them, clearly, unmistakably. Damp fur, dried manure, warm breath mixed with straw. Not pleasant, but familiar. And in this world, familiarity matters more than comfort. That scent tells your body that life is present here. Not only human life, but other living beings enduring winter under the same roof. In this space, humans do not stand apart from nature. They exist inside it. Livestock do more than provide warmth. They provide security. Keeping animals indoors protects the household's most valuable assets from theft predators or being lost in snow. In a long winter, losing a cow or a flock could be catastrophic, so people and animals sleep near one another, watching over one another, depending on one another. You can hear the animals breathing, slow, deep, steady, not human but not unfamiliar. Those sounds blend into the nighttime background, becoming part of a natural lullaby, without melody, only rhythm. Livestock shift occasionally. Hooves touch packed earth. Straw rustles. A low grunt escapes. No one fully wakes. There is no need. These sounds are not alarms. They simply confirm that everything continues as it should. Inside the longhouse, warmth does not come from a single source. It is the sum of many living bodies. Fire, humans, animals, each contributes a little. None is sufficient alone, but together they create an environment that can be survived. You can sense how primitive this arrangement is. There is no clear boundary between house and byre, no modern idea of hygiene, only one clear priority: making it through the night. To do that, people accept smells, accept noise, accept the close presence of other living beings. This is not deprivation, it is adaptation. The animals adapt as well in their own way, standing close, moving little, holding warmth for one another. They do not know their heat helps humans sleep. Their bodies simply do what they have always done winter after winter. You lie there listening to the heavy breathing of cattle mixing with the lighter breathing of people. One shared rhythm, one shared space. At night there is no hierarchy, only living beings that need warmth. In the modern world we try to separate ourselves from discomfort, from smell, from noise, from other forms of life. In the Viking longhouse, separation does not exist. Humans sleep among life, not apart from it, and that creates a deep sense of belonging. The feeling that you are part of a natural circle where everything supports everything else without needing explanation. Livestock do not make the night comfortable, but they make it endurable. And in a long winter, that is all that is required. Your eyelids may feel heavier now, not because of smell or sound, but because there is nothing left to control. The animals are present, people are present, the fire is tended, the blankets are in place, every layer of protection is working. In this ancient order, there is no romance, only effectiveness, tested by time across hundreds of nights, across winters, survived by those who learned how to live alongside nature rather than fight it. And when animal warmth has fully blended into the shared air, when every living being has found its place, sleep begins to arrive in its own way. Not continuous, not immediately deep, but fragmented. Sleeping, waking, sleeping again, mirroring the rhythm of the longhouse itself. And from there, slowly and naturally, the Viking night carries you onward into segmented sleep. A way of resting unfamiliar to the modern world, yet perfectly suited to a life where fire, smoke, people and animals share one roof through the sleep. Long winter night. Dielbnd Chuy. Trung tu the I. Chhate. Thhaa. Chhha. 3on. Lngi. NHP Chm. Emru Ngha Chi Chuen. Video YouTube. Chuen MNHT. Quan Vi Tun BCC PHN Triar. Once the warmth of the livestock has blended into the shared air, once the fire has settled into softly breathing embers, sleep in the Viking longhouse does not arrive in a straight line. It arrives in rhythm. Sleep, wake, then sleep again. There is no rush, no tension, no expectation that rest must stretch unbroken through the entire night. In the modern world, we are often taught that good sleep means sleep without interruption. Inside the Viking longhouse, interruption is normal. And it makes sense. You drift off once your body is warm enough. Then at some point in the night, the hour does not matter. You wake lightly, not in alarm, not fully opening your eyes. Awareness rises just a little like a small wave. Perhaps to listen, perhaps to feel, perhaps because the fire needs another small piece of wood. Someone rises quietly. Steps are slow. No one is fully awakened. A short log is placed onto the embers. The red glow brightens briefly, then settles. Warmth is renewed. Balance returns. At another moment, someone checks the animals. A glance, a gentle touch, a heavy breath confirming that all is well. Then that person returns to their place, pulls the coverings close, and sleep continues. These waking moments do not ruin sleep. They are part of sleep. In Old Norse sagas, there are brief mentions of people waking during the night. Not to perform great deeds, not for anxious watch, but simply to tend the fire, to listen to the wind, to ensure that the house is still breathing in its proper phase. Rhythm. There is no clock, no rigid schedule. Night is not divided by minutes or hours, but by the needs of living things. You sleep when you can, you wake when you must, then you sleep again. Within this rhythm, the body is never forced to plunge immediately into deep rest. It is allowed to rise, allowed to adjust, allowed to settle once more, and each time it settles, sleep returns more easily because there is no pressure to sleep enough. The Vikings did not measure sleep in hours. They measured it by the ability to continue living the next day. Segmented sleep served that purpose well. When you wake briefly during the night, you are not pulled violently out of rest. The light is low. The sounds are familiar. Everything is kept minimal. There is no need to brighten the space. No need for conversation. Only a small task, and then lying down again. Sleep, therefore, is not broken. It simply changes phase. In the modern world, waking at night often brings worry. You check the time. You calculate. You fear that sleep will not return, and that fear itself keeps you awake. In the Viking longhouse, there is no such fear. Waking at night is not a failure. It is habit. Part of the nightly cycle. You may feel a gentle permission in this idea. You do not need uninterrupted sleep to be restored. Human bodies slept this way for a very long time before electricity, clocks and schedules existed. Deep sleep for a while, light waking for a while, then sleep again. Each segment offers recovery. Together they are enough for a new day to begin. Segmented sleep also allows adaptation to the environment. When the wind shifts, when the temperature drops, when animals stir, someone wakes to make an adjustment. Not as a burden carried by one person, but as a natural sequence of waking and sleeping shared among many. You lie there aware of this rhythm without needing to participate actively. Perhaps you wake once, perhaps you do not. It does not matter. What matters is that your body knows waking in the night is safe, and when it feels safe, sleep comes more easily. Segmented sleep does not demand perfection. It accepts unevenness, interruption, flexibility, and because of that it fits a world that cannot be fully controlled. A world where wind, smoke, fire, people and animals share one space. You may feel your eyelids grow heavier as this understanding settles in, not from fatigue, but because an invisible burden has been set down, the burden of needing to sleep the right way. In the Viking night, there is no right way to relate sleep. There is only a way that fits. And once segmented, sleep becomes the background. Once the body accepts waking and sleeping as a gentle cycle, people begin to support rest with something very practical. Not from outside, but from within. Food. Simple, energy-rich meals that allow the body to generate heat from the inside, so that each return to sleep can be deeper, warmer, and last just a little longer. And slowly, softly, the Viking night carries you onward into internal warmth, where a bowl of hot porridge, a bit of fat, or a swallow of warm milk becomes the final blanket for sleep, quiet and enduring. D, 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 T, 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 I, T, 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 I, T, T, T. Once the rhythm of sleep has accepted waking and returning again, once the fire has been kept low and the smoke has settled, the people inside the Viking longhouse rely on another source of warmth, one that does not come from outside, not need to be wrapped around the body, but is generated from within. That source is food, not a feast, not abundance, just simple nourishment, enough energy for the body to continue working through the night. A pot of thick porridge simmers slowly over glowing embers. Porridge made from coarse grains, sometimes with scraps of meat roots or a small amount of rendered fat mixed in. No elaborate seasoning, no decoration, just warmth. The porridge is eaten after darkness has fully settled, when the wind outside has steadied and everyone understands that the night will be long. Each spoonful is not meant to bring pleasure or fullness, but to ignite a small fire inside the body. Alongside the porridge is meat, most often salted meat, dried meat, or slow-cooked stew if fuel allows. Meat provides slow, sustained energy. The body takes longer to digest it, and during that process heat is released steadily rather than flaring and fading. That steadiness is what matters most in winter. Sometimes there is milk, cow's milk or goat's milk, warmed slightly, taken in small amounts. Milk is more than food. It is warmth passed from livestock into human bodies, completing a quiet and efficient circle. And then there is fat. Fat is not considered heavy or indulgent. It is considered valuable. A bit melted into porridge, a thin layer coating meat. Fat carries a great deal of energy in a small volume. When the body must stay warm through the night, fat becomes a kind of internal blanket. At times, people even use bone marrow slowly cooked until it melts. Rich, warm, and dense. Only a little is needed. Enough to make the body feel different, as if a small flame has been lit deep inside the chest. Eating in the Viking longhouse is not meant to awaken the senses or create joy. It is meant to support sleep. Once the stomach has enough energy, the body no longer needs to shiver to generate heat. Muscles are allowed to relax. The heart rate slows. Breathing deepens. The sensation is unmistakable. Warmth, spreading outward from the belly slowly and evenly, being full in the sense of just enough, allows sleep to arrive more easily. The Vikings did not eat heavily before sleeping. They understood that too much food causes discomfort, while too little invites cold. Everything remains balanced. Enough to carry the night. Enough to wake in the morning. In the modern world, we often separate eating from sleeping. Here they are tightly connected. Sleep does not depend only on blankets and fire. It depends on fuel. You can imagine the moment after eating. No one speaks much. No one stands immediately. People pull the blankets closer, lean back against wood, feel the warmth settle in the stomach. Then naturally segmented sleep continues. This time, deeper, longer. Food also makes brief awakenings gentler. When someone rises to tend the fire or check the animals, they do not feel drained. Heat from within supports heat from outside. Everything works together without discussion. Inside the longhouse, food is not individual. One shared pot of porridge. Meat divided evenly. No one keeps the best portion for themselves at night, because if one person grows cold, the whole house grows colder. The community understands this connection without needing to explain it. You lie there beneath heavy blankets, aware of warmth building inside you. Not the sharp warmth of a fire, but a lasting warmth, slow to fade. And that warmth allows sleep to come without effort. On the longest nights, when the wind does not shift and snow continues to fall, food prevents exhaustion. It does not need to be plentiful. It needs to be timely, the right kind, the right rhythm. The Vikings did not speak of nutrition. They spoke through results. Those who ate enough slept better. Those who slept better survived the winter. Your eyelids may feel heavier now, not from forced drowsiness, but because every condition has been met. Fire outside, blankets above, communal warmth around you. And now heat from within. Once food has done its work, once the stomach is calm, sleep is no longer pulled away by hunger or cold. It is allowed to stay longer, deeper, And as the night stretches on, when the body is warm enough to release its grip, people sometimes turn to one final thing. Not to sustain warmth through the whole night, but to offer a brief comfort. A small sip, a fleeting warmth that rises quickly, then fades. Ale, beer, mead. Not used to survive an entire winter, but enough to soften the final edge of the day. And slowly, gently, the Viking night carries you onward into that short-lived comfort light, as a final breath before sleep closes around you once more. D-E-N-D, Chi-Chu-I, Trung the Tui-T-E, Kung C-T-K, Chi-Chu-I, 3-O-N, L-N-G-I, N-H-P, Chi-H-M, D-T-O, Chi-Chu-I-N, Video YouTube, Chu-I-N, M-N-H, T-Q, V-I-Toon-B-C-C, Chi-Chu-I, N-T-R-C. Once the stomach is warm, once porridge and fat have finished their work, there are some nights when the Vikings allow themselves one small thing more. Not necessary, not lasting, but comforting. A sip of beer, a small cup of weak ale, or a little mead, fermented honey, lightly fragrant, gently sweet. Not to get drunk, not to forget winter, only to soften the final moment of the day. Viking ale is not strong. It is cloudy, much weaker than modern beer. Brewed for daily drinking, safer than water. Mead is rarer, more precious, and even then it is never taken in large amounts. Each drink has its place within the slow rhythm of the longhouse. As the warm liquid moves down the throat, the body responds quickly. Blood vessels widen. A feeling of warmth rises into the chest, the face. Not deep, not long-lasting, but enough to let the shoulders drop to slow the breath. It is a false warmth. The Vikings understood this, even if they did not name it. They knew alcohol does not truly keep the body warm. It only makes you feel warm. And if taken in excess, the cold returns more fiercely. That is why drink appears only in moderation. 1 sip, 2 sips, no more. Some saga stories tell of nights when people drank too much and were punished by the cold. These tales are not told dramatically. They are told plainly, like a margin note in everyday life. Everything requires restraint. Inside the longhouse, there is no loud laughter when alcohol is shared on winter nights. No singing, no celebration, only quiet passing. The cup moves from hand to hand, slowly, without pressure. Drink does not become the center of the night. It simply passes through like a brief, warm breath, then fades. You can imagine the sensation. A small flare of warmth, then calm. Not enough to wake you fully, not enough to intoxicate. Just enough to let the body release a little more before sleep returns. In the modern world, alcohol is often tied to entertainment, noise escape. Here it is simply a very small tool within a survival toolkit. It is not trusted, not relied upon, only used as a short-lived comfort. The Vikings do not drink to forget tomorrow. They drink to close today. And when that false warmth fades, the body returns to more reliable sources, blankets, shared heat, livestock food slowly digesting. Drink withdraws politely, leaving little behind. You may feel your eyelids grow heavier after that brief moment. Not because of alcohol, but because nothing more is needed. Everything is already enough. The night does not need to be made more pleasant. It only needs to be passed through. Inside the longhouse, no one expects drink to bring deep sleep. They understand sleep comes from many things working together. Community adaptation, acceptance. Alcohol stands at the edge like a friend who visits briefly then leaves early. There is something gentle in the way the Vikings treat drink. It is not worshipped, not forbidden entirely. It is simply placed where it belongs. You lie there, sensing the false warmth dissolve, replaced by something steadier. The body is not fooled. It knows what is real and what is fleeting. And because of that, it does not ask for more. In that light, clarity, sleep returns. Not rushed, not immediately deep, but stable, like a small wave, even and repeating. Ale, beer, mead, all have completed their modest role. No one mentions them again. The night continues on its own rhythm, and when brief comforts have passed, when there is nothing left to add or take away, the Vikings do one final thing they accept. They do not conquer winter. They do not defeat the cold. They simply live alongside it. From that quiet acceptance, the Viking night opens into its final stretch, where analysis fades, description falls away, and only steady breathing, a dying fire, and the gentle permission to sleep remain. ILBNDCH Trung 3 TIT HNCTK THN THITTTHN 30NLNGINGPCHM M Rueng Theophong CHK Chu N Video YouTube Chu N M NHT Quan Vt. By this point in the night there is nothing left that needs to be done. The fire is still there, not flaring, not fully extinguished. Only embers glowing, quietly breathing in small, steady pulses. Weak red light reflects off wood, off animal hides, off faces already deep in sleep. No one is watching. And yet the light remains just enough so the space does not disappear entirely. Winter still surrounds the longhouse. The wind still moves. Snow still falls. There is no sign that the night has softened, and no one is waiting for it to. The Vikings do not expect to defeat winter. They do not speak of overcoming it. They do not treat the cold night as an enemy to be beaten. They simply live alongside it, more slowly with less movement closer together. And that is enough. Inside the longhouse no one stays awake to think about tomorrow. No one makes grand plans. No one asks what the cold means. Night is not the time for understanding. Night is simply the time to be still. You can feel that now, not with your mind but with your body. Your body does not need more information, no more images, no more story. It only needs permission to grow heavy. Breathing around you is steady, some deep, some light. Livestock breathe faintly in the distance. Wood creaks softly now and then as temperatures shift. No sound demands attention. Everything simply exists. The Vikings do not try to create perfect comfort. They create only enough conditions to keep breathing. And in this world, still breathing at the end of the night is a quiet success. The fire still lives. People still lie beside one another. Children still sleep safely in the center. Animals still breathe evenly. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be taken away. You do not need to stay awake to hear the end of this story. There is nothing ahead you must remember. No lesson you need to carry into tomorrow. The people of the Viking longhouse did not carry lessons into sleep. They carried accepted fatigue and just enough safety. Night is not something to solve. Night is something to move through, very slowly. If you wake in the middle of the night, that is fine. If sleep does not come immediately, that is fine too. In this world, sleep does not need to be correct. It only needs to arrive when it can. You may let your shoulders drop a little more. You may let your jaw loosen. You may allow your back to sink deeper into where you lie. There is no need to try to sleep, only the need to stop resisting. The Vikings did not resist winter. They adjusted their rhythm to fit it. Sleeping more, doing less, staying closer together. And within that adjustment they found a rough, honest kind of peace. Not peace because everything was good, but peace because nothing more was being demanded. You may notice the story itself slowing now, words thinning, images softening. Not because there is nothing left to say, but because nothing more is needed. The fire will burn a little longer, then it will fade, then it will become ash. The wind will continue to move, but you do not need to listen closely. People will keep breathing, and that is enough for tonight. You do not need to imagine anything else. If images blur, let them blur. If sounds drift away, let them drift. The story does not need a sharp ending. It only needs to dissolve like warmth dissolving into sleep. In the Viking world, morning does not come because night is defeated. Morning comes because night has been endured long enough, and now you do not need to conquer sleep either. You do not need to seek it. You do not need to call for it. You only need to allow yourself to remain still a little longer, breathing in, breathing out, slow, even. If your eyes have already closed, let them stay closed. If thoughts have grown sparse, let them drift. There is nothing you need to do right now. There is nowhere you need to go. There is only night, only breath, only the faint presence of people who once lived this way, slowly close together and warm enough to sleep. And when this story stops, it is not an ending. It is simply silence continuing. You may let your body rest now, very slowly, very quietly. Sleep. From the story, How Did Vikings Sleep in Longhouses Without Freezing to Death? There is a quiet yet enduring message that runs through the entire Viking winter night. Human beings do not survive by conquering their circumstances, but by learning how to adjust themselves in order to live alongside them. The Vikings did not defeat winter. They did not try to eliminate the cold, the darkness, or scarcity. Instead, they simplified their lives, stayed closer to one another, and adapted to the natural rhythm around them. They slept together to preserve warmth. They used heavy blankets, animal hides, and energy-rich food to generate heat from within. They accepted segmented sleep instead of forcing themselves into uninterrupted rest. None of these solutions were perfect, but they were enough to survive, enough to rest, enough to continue into the next day. That lesson still holds meaning in our modern lives. We have more convenience than ever, yet we are often more stressed, more isolated, and more likely to pressure ourselves to be okay, to sleep correctly, to stay in control. The Viking story reminds us that sometimes what we need is not another solution but less resistance. We do not need perfection. We do not need to win every battle. We only need to feel safe enough, warm enough, and that safety often comes from the people beside us, not from material comfort. If you are struggling to sleep tonight, remember this: sleep does not need to meet a standard. It only needs permission. Permission to slow down, to soften, to stop fighting yourself. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it brought you even a small sense of calm, please like and share this video with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel to continue traveling with us through slow, gentle historical stories. Stories that help us rest more deeply and sleep a little better each night.